Marketing, live show number 376. I'm your host, Lauren Gray. It is Friday, 11:30 a.m. Eastern U.S. time, and we are, of course, in a different locale. We're actually in one of where I live. Our office is still, we're still cleaning it up after Ian, recovering what we can, and so forth and so on. I was thinking about putting the backdrop picture that I had of the backdrop behind me, and unfortunately, the platform that I use, Live Webinar, you know how you have those blurry backgrounds and so forth, and you have that really ghosty image around it. It just was so distracting for me. I figured, well, at least it may be distracting behind me in the sense of the difference of so forth, but at least it's not that blurry, ghosty thing. So anyways, that describes why we're in the background. Still have our logo, still have my microphone here. So we're still able to broadcast the show for now until we get things reorganized with what our next office will be like, or if the same office gets renovated or whatever. So anyways, with that, I want to get into the topic today. Some very interesting conversations that came from this past week that really made me decide on this topic because it changed my way of thinking. It was like, you know, when you talk to certain people, whether it be at conferences or peers or within your own teams and so forth, and just something that's said or something that's referred to or something that is brought up in the solution process, it's like a missing piece to a puzzle that you've been thinking, but you can't get the picture of it. Then all of a sudden that piece gets put in place. And it's like, wow, that makes sense. Well, that happened for me this week. I was talking with one of our team members about analytics values, data usages, how we approach the marketing sequence of things, and trying to create, we were doing a mind map, a progression of little lines. And think of it as an organizational chart. When this happens, these things happen. Think of workflows, funnels, things like that. He says, Lauren, you're actually thinking about it in reverse. I said, I'm sorry, what? He says, with Google, they've changed how they're deciding on what their marketing exposure types will be. And I said, do tell. And so we started going into this very long dialogue. So let me bring you to what brought me up to that moment of discussion. The topic today is, did Google just change the rules of marketing? So we have for many, many years, and progressively as we've gotten more and more tools and more capabilities with what we're doing, we have always sought that granular, singular person that was the most interested, the most engaging, and most likely to convert. As a matter of fact, most of our marketing is based on that ZMA, zero moment of transaction. How can we get to be that person at that moment, or that product at that moment that person decides to purchase? And all of our marketing strategy is based on discovering that market of one. Now, of course, we want lots of markets of one. One person doesn't make our business, but one person does contribute to our business. Coffee's good. So with that, our marketing strategy is based on sifting the chaff from the wheat, so to speak. We take a massive amount of volume of people. We really don't know much about them. We don't really engage with them. We don't pay to be engaged with them. We just go at different levels of where they finally get to I wouldn't say a controllable size, but a defined size. And what I mean by defined size is how we do our market strategy. We designate personas. We've had a lot of discussions about that. We designate interest categories, demographies, behavioral geographies. And when these people are in the context of what we're looking for, we're deciding what we're looking for, okay? We pursue them by creating campaigns that are placed in their discovery engagement process with a variety of channels. That is the marketing process we've always lived with. The idea being that as these people begin to interact with us more, their value of engagement to us goes up. Therefore, our initial additional efforts of getting in front of them, staying in front of them, is very strong. We want to make sure that now we've sifted everybody else that's not really interested, so forth and so on, down to the point of the people that are. And I kind of equated it to the game that you Pinko. I should have looked up the name before I just referred to it, where you drop a ball at the top and it goes ding 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 ding, and bounces all the way down until it lands into what you hope is the slot that is the most valuable to you. Now it's going to bug me. Anyways, the idea being that we are trying to hope that what we do up above guides them on the way down. Not always do we have the ability to influence them to keep shoving them over to the place we want them to land, but we try. And so our process of marketing is all about when it turns interesting for us as marketers is when we have culled out everybody that's not interested in us, in our perspective, and we want to discuss just those few people that are the core. Like traditionally, we always talk about this funnel, okay? This funnel from a large mass of unknown entities down to the singularity of the person that's actually making a purchase decision for us. In all of the renovations and innovations of our industry and as of technology in a whole, we've talked about big data. It's been a buzzword for years, and people have thrown around in a variety of interpretations and values and so forth. But I don't think we really looked at and considered what that really meant. We talked about how to use big data. What is big data going to do to us? How do we sort through all the masses of data to find correlations and things? We've had lots of discussions about that. Well, we've also watched technology grow. We've watched Google create artificial intelligence, as well as other large companies make artificial intelligence. Gosh knows the government probably has also their considerable size computers, supercomputers, quantum computers, so forth and so on. And it's about the fact of, as you quickly learn, they only work if you give them data. So we're thinking, wow, this is wonderful. We have all this data over here that we're now able to track and collect, all this massive amounts of data that we don't know have any relevancy to it. The old chaos theory of a butterfly flaps its wings on one side of the world and there's a hurricane on the other side. And there is a correlation in a very unique way that those things do happen. So the idea that big data is now being used in a way that I didn't really anticipate the change of our strategy. We'll talk about the value of this for 2023 budgets and 2023 perspective and so forth in a little bit. But the idea is that there is so much data that is being gathered that you have to identify the data in such a way that it will be used in the way you want it to be interpreted. Let me explain that. And it was a very fundamental mental shift for me. I often don't assign goal values in analytics tracking. And we're going to talk about universal analytics for right now, just for baseline. I don't really usually assign dollar values to this because I feel that they're usually contrived. They're usually poorly motivated in the sense it's trying to validate the value proposition of an agency's efforts or an internal person's like, hey, look, if I assign a value to every aspect of view or what have you and correlate it to actual conversions, at least I can assign a value to it so that I can show my superiors that their money is being well spent on this effort. Like, hey, look, we had 100 people come in, and when you dilute it down to the actual version, each one of those people represent X dollars. I always looked down on that as being an artificial creation of value, and I still do. But I've taken a reevaluation of whether or not that might be a new valuable way of looking at this. And I say that from the idea that in our marketing, we really know that, let's just say optimistically, 3% of the people that come to our website actually engage with it. Just engage with it, meaning that they go beyond just seeing our website, bounce rates, durabilities, entry-level page, whatever have you, and then they leave. That means 97% of the people that come to our website, we don't interact with. We've immediately culled them away. Now, we use some aspects of their data, like where did they come from, what geography did they look from? Okay, that's helpful for trend. Okay, we talk about trend and pace as being valuable measuring metric components, and I still do. We use them for total volume of traffic, like how well are we of being an authority of content of ourselves so that we have X number of people looking at our website. We have value to that number, but we treat it as a number. We treat it in general terms because they're not what we're really wanting, which is people buying stuff. They're not booking with us. So that 97% of the people, we of course would want more of them, but we realize that a lot of times people discover us or come across from us for a variety of ways that don't resonate with their reason for staying with us or engaging with us or working with us. So with that, what value is the data past the large gross metrics? Well, ironically, if you think about it, Google can track all of that in ways now that we haven't really incorporated into our market strategy. It's the idea that if we were to assign some sort of value to any of that engagement, the fact that they came to the website, the fact that they went to a certain page on the website or not, the fact that they clicked on a certain action or not, if we started assigning values to those, then what that does in the new world of analytics is allows us to track that data as a reference to other data to determine whether or not there's something of interest, correlation, confidence factor about that traffic. And I know it's going to sound geeky, heady, and so forth. And like, we're going off on where we are, because it's a change in perception of how we look at marketing. I'd like to give the example, and I thought about this as an analogy for what I'm speaking of. We've all seen Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory, old version, new version, whatever, and all great. But this is the marketing mentality that I thought about being a marketer as to what Willy Wonka did. Everybody uses his product. Everybody loves his product. Okay. So he decides, out of the entire world of people that already enjoy his product, he is going to give them a reason to buy more of their product and create a group of people that have successfully engaged with him, golden ticket, okay, for the next step of what he wants to discover. So he sends all this out, and he gets a group of people that were fortunate enough that they got a golden ticket. So now there is a smaller set of people, okay, still undefined as to their value purpose yet in their eyes, but they've been gathered together. What Willy Wonka was trying to do was get to that unique one person that he wanted to interact with. In our case, translating that would be the person that actually purchases our product, books with us in our hotel room, or what have you. Okay. So they went from a general amount of data. Everybody in the world that uses my product, I want to find a group of people that I want to bring together and see if I can talk to them to get to the person that will actually act on what I talk about. We don't do that in marketing. Now, we may say, oh, well, we broadcast to large audiences knowing that they're going to get down to smaller audiences. Right. But that's that Jenga ball, or whatever it's called. The ding, 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 ding. It's on its own path. We're not controlling where it goes. We can't control where it's going to end up. We can only watch that once we've put it into play, it's moving towards some conclusion, whether it's the one we want or the one we don't want. But we're not actively guiding it to something. That's where the usage of data now, the ability of data now, is so different, because now we can make Google tell us or share with us what it is that we need to understand about all that 97% of other people that are touching our site, our engagements of channels and everything else. It can look at all this data and say, well, and it's not about content at that point. It's not about navigation at that point or UI experience at that point. It's about intent. See, that's the amazing part of what's transitioned in our technology for our industry, or in marketing in general. It isn't about the words. If you want to go back a few years and you look at when Google first took away our keywords, oh my gosh, how dare you take this away? We want to know what it is that people are using by word so that we can add those words into our website so that we can show up better because we're using the words for them to find us. And Google, at their time, and they've grown exponentially since then, so it's not the words that are important as it is the intent of the use of the words. And they give plenty of examples, and we've certainly discussed this over the years on the show as to what that means. Of course, they give us attribution string to show us that it's the engagement of their search related to other things, their intent of their interest was the more important part. But even at that time, Google was only reflecting what it was seeing as data. It was saying, look, this is what this is showing us. It wasn't actually taking the data and getting ahead of it and saying, well, based on all of this, this would be something most likely that this group of people would want to know about next. And that is the behavior of performance, the next step up, the ability to understand with reasonable accuracy what most likely will happen next. Now, we've seen examples of this in our lives many times. I mean, grocery stores, you go in, you turn to the right. That's what people normally do. The floor plan is built on purpose for lots of things. If anybody that's gone through marketing school, for marketing classes for college or even in high school, knows the idea of eye level versus floor level versus up level, putting things at floor level for kids to inspire their parents to buy them. The more usable, needed items are usually in the back of the store or to the far left in the corner store, so that it guides you through the store. So it incentivizes impulse buying or ability to expose other products to you that you might end up choosing to purchase. We've all learned about this, but we really haven't translated that into our digital world as to the ability of knowing that if this is what they're doing, and we know from their behavior, this is what they're doing it for, then what can we do to ensure that our engagement with them is heightened, that we have more opportunities to engage with them? Now, we've stumbled through the process. We've had many, many discussions about the fact that social is the predication to other conversations. It is the non-one-to-one. It's the voyeuristic engagement of content. I don't have to engage with you to get the content you're sharing with me. I can see what you shared. I just simply have to be interested in looking at it. I don't have to respond to an ad. I don't have to respond to anything other than I can see what you're talking about without having to the unfortunates of having to talk to you about it. A lot of that is because that's the way people enjoy filtering down what there is a broad interest in to the things that they're most interested in doing something about. It's kind of like when you go to buy a car. You don't need to talk to the salesperson right away. They want to talk to you right away because they want to guide your selection process right off the bat while you're still the most pliable as to what you're interested in. But you want to look around, see what might interest you, what inspires you, what you definitely don't want versus what you might be interested in. And then at some point, you're willing and wanting to engage with a salesperson to discuss the details of what that would take to actually purchase. Just talk to anybody. How many people want to go on their first trip to a car place and not want to look around, but want the salesperson to guide them? We don't have that trust factor. We don't have that thing that says, "Oh, I know that you know exactly what I want," because you don't even know who I was until I walked in the door. I bring that example up because really, with the technology we have about the amount of data, we can learn more about our users before we ever engage with them. We can understand what they're looking for and what they might do when they find what they're looking for in ways now that we've never had before. We can pretty much be that person that's the right person at the right time with the right conversation. That's ultimately a goal with our marketing that we have talked about, but it's always been an idealistic little trophy that's up on the shelf. Boy, that's what we love to do. That's what we love to get. But the reality of it is we got to trudge through the quagmire of 97% of the people that's touching our website. We don't know what they're interested, what they're doing, whatever. It's just a generic large fat number. We can only engage with the people that we have enough information on to be able to talk to them because they're staying engaged with us. We're willing to accept the huge culling of data to only talk to the people that we have most likeliness of converting to. And it's because we fixate on ROI, of course, which is a valuable number, but not exactly the gold standard anymore, as we talked about with trends and pace. So because of that, how do we translate it into a marketing strategy? That's the challenge, because we're really flipping things over. Where I told you, and this is where I made the statement about our topic today, did Google just change the rules of marketing? We've always gone under the predication of culling through our data to look for the component that is highest converting. What would happen if we flipped that over? Well, we're going to look at all the data to determine how we can expand and offer conversion to people that would be likely to be wanting to purchase. We don't know all the nuances of the decision factors. We know that people look at our photo galleries of our hotels and they see something in our static glamorized room picture that they like, and that is the trigger for them. They see that there's a particular coffee machine that's in the breakfast area or meat slicer, look at AC Hotels, right? That they say, oh, that'd be pretty neat. They have this and that, or I like the modern look of it, whatever it is. We don't know all those individual triggers. But strangely enough, Google has a good sense of that because of all the things that they're aware of what these people look for, engage with, react to, and a variety of other stuff that we just don't have. By the time that we see them touch us, it's because of what we are or what we're related to or what we're connected to, not so much us in general with them. We're not in their lives every day. And certainly we can't handle the metrics of being in millions of people's lives every day, but Google can. And I'm making Google as a metaphor to a lot of organizations. Amazon can do the same things as to their ability of this massive amount of data and the ability to make that data make sense. But here's where the gap happens. You have to ask the right question to get the right answer. They have the data and they can see the data and they can see trends and they can see things. But until you look at asking the right question of what does this mean? What can I do about this? At that point, the data becomes relevant to what we're asking. It's kind of the theory of quantum mechanics, where it's like nothing happens until it's observed. Until you are looking for something for it, this data just sits. Once you begin to look for something in the data, then it becomes active and alive, because then it relates to the queries that you're making. And I'm trying to get not existential about the quantum mechanics of marketing, but the idea is there. The idea is that now we look at everything, determine what it is that we need to know. This is the transition that's really happening with Google Universal Analytics compared to GA4, the new transition, because GA4 literally can track everything by default. It creates a massive amount of data. Now, you're gathering all this data, but you don't know why you're gathering it. It's kind of like why you pick up every piece of trash around to try to forensically figure out what's the common factor of why all this trash is in a particular location. You don't know. I mean, you're just laying it all out. It's like, okay, don't know what all this is. That was a bad analogy. The idea is that it is about objectives and goals. And you first have to define what you would do with the information if you had it, to then decide what question you would ask to get it. I've talked about this with surveys incessantly. Whenever we talk about the surveys, survey values, usages of surveys, questionnaires or anything, it's always under the condition of what would you do with the answer? That would dictate the question. Because it's great to ask any question, like, what's your favorite color? Blue. Well, what would you do with that? Does that make a difference for you that you know that the favorite color is blue? In itself, maybe not. But the fact that that added with a bunch of other pieces of data would make a difference, because maybe that was the trigger point of a picture of your room that they had blue walls. You don't know. Google would have all that data to be able to say, well, we actually know that this person responds very well to these kind of things. Imagine how amazingly dynamic it would be for a website to literally be built in front of a person based on all the nuances that is known about them as they interact with you. Technically, it's actually possible. We've talked about dynamic build websites. We talked about multiple gate entry websites, vertical tree trunk entry websites, and so forth. We've had those discussions. That technology has been around for a number of years, well ahead of the data now that would drive those kind of things. The idea that we look in a macro view, okay, or that we start with a micro view of conversion by going up to a macro view of opportunity. We're inverting the view. Google's doing that for us with the GA4. It will track anything and everything. Already, automatically, everything is tracked and measured. It's retained for a shorter period of time, which is why you have the 14-month window that they're talking about. So you need to have a more durable way of keeping this data. You're not going to try to be able to keep all the data, because it would then begin to turn into quite a massive thing, especially larger scale traffic websites and so forth. But you would be able to keep all this data if you want to. You know, you do Google storage, whatever, to have this. Okay, but that way you could always go back to it once you define a new question to ask or a new answer to make a question for. You can go back and see that the data is there to actually give you some insights to that. But the GA4, the transition to it, is allowing us to gather everything and then ask the right question to determine what everything data-wise can share with us. Compared to, how can I define my finite small target, the long tail, remember that? The ZMOT, the funnel gets to the point of transaction, that narrow staircase. Okay, rather than thinking about that as your end goal, think of it as your starting goal under the metrics of how big can we make that conversion group? How big can we take in more than that 3% of our website and dig into that 97% of the people that don't do anything with our website, they come to our website. That inversion is impressive. That it's there. It's available to be done with Google, and more of it as GA4 becomes more understood by people, more used by people, and the data begins to get interpreted more by people. The idea is that in order for the data to be triggered, going back to one of the earlier statements, you have to assign it a value. That brings it into light in Google to say, this is a data point that I need to keep track of because there's a value to it. Again, the whole idea of quantum, if it's not observed, it didn't happen. If you're not assigning a value, the data that Google is collecting is ambiguously general in the sense that it's there. But if you don't tell that it's important enough to measure, it's not going to be measured, and it's not going to be put in comparison to other things that gives you these perspectives. And again, the show is a little hard to do just waving hands and staring at a camera, The idea that you have to define the intent and then go back to the data and make the data tell you what it already knows, compared to taking the data, seeing what you can find, and then interpreting from it. It's absolutely in reverse. I'm trying to think of the bullet points I want to say. So the Willy Wonka thing I definitely want to point out to is a contrast to that. They're going from massive data down to a categorization of interest, which is, you say, well, that sounds similar to what we're doing. It's not. We normally go to who do we need and then define that into our market strategy out of the masses. So it's an inversion of that. There's things that's going on with Google and their platform capabilities about event engagement. We used to have things. This is an example of how the data collection has changed and how it's measured. It used to be, we would measure clicks. Okay, they saw the ad. If they clicked on it, boom, first off, we got charged. Secondly, what came from that click? What was the conversion from that click? That's been our world historically, and it's still our world now for the most part. Now it's about engagement. Okay, engagement reflects intent and interest. I take this example from YouTube advertisement, how they have changed how this works. We've all seen the just domination of ads in anything YouTube at this point, to the point where they are actually now offering you to pay not to see as many ads with premium. But the idea is that you had different varieties of ad types. We've had one on the show before. We talked about different YouTube ad varieties and so forth. But let's just take the skippable ads right now. If you skip as soon as you can, Google won't charge you. Strangely enough, however, if you don't skip as soon as you see it and a few more seconds go by before you do skip it, Google may not charge you as well. And the rationale of this is the engagement of it. It wasn't enough for the context of the ad, because it now knows what the ad is intended for, to create the message that would validate a charge for that person's exposure. Also, Google knows so much about these people's engagement that they know that they just didn't see that they could skip it, and or the fact that it wasn't anything that they were directly related to, even though that's rare because Google would only really kind of throws these ads up based on what they know of you anyway. But if you're running in campaigns and so forth and you're willing to pay the price, Google will put ads in front of people in spite of the fact that they probably aren't as well matched because they've hit some criteria you filter geographically or demographically that will push it, and Google will charge you for the extra cost to do that to a non-relevant viewer. But the idea is that there's now an engagement perspective as to what you can do. There's lots of variations that YouTube has added in there. There's 3 of them that are in the notes, the show notes that you can see will be Moment Blast, product feeds on Discovery ads, and of course, audio ads and podcast ads. These are all new variations about intent, okay, and engagement on medium. You look at YouTube, it's a visual thing. So why would you have an audio ad? Well, the audio ad doesn't have to have pictures and images that are a video with audio behind it. It can simply be a static image and or a slight GIF animation, but the audio is the message. Of course, they go on podcasts. Of course, they can go on other audio mediums. But the fact that you can actually have them in video mediums as audio, like YouTube and so forth, strong. I mean, yes, of course, you can put them on Spotify. You can put them on iHeartRadio and so forth. But the idea is that these variations about intent and interest is based on the vast amount of knowledge that Google has about you to know that this is a relevancy worthy of your consideration in the ad placement. Of course, Google wants to charge the ad sponsor, okay? But they don't want to charge it where the ad sponsor is discouraged because the cost factor is against the value that it produces. And it also doesn't want to hurt the relationship with the user, which is its ultimate purpose, which is giving you non-relevant content. So it behooves Google to make sure that they use the vast knowledge about you to ensure that these ads and types of ads and platforms that you're using and interacting with them are as relevant as possible based on the intents of interest that you have displayed with them. Okay, so here comes the rub on the realities of these types of things. I have noticed through the budget process, and I know that you're saying, geez, Lauren, it's the end of October, you're still talking about budgets. Yes, I am, because actually in October, it's still budgets. And I found out from some people They haven't even started the budgets, which really is very strange for me to consider that they would be building a budget in November. But some people have actually decided that the later is better because there's more relevant real data that runs them all the way until the 10th month or 11th month, to give as much actualized data to base more accuracy on their forecasted data for 2023. So I can't really fault them. Like I said, there's no written in stone ways that these things done. We just have the uniqueness as an industry that we have a budget season between August, September, and October that we do all these things in. Some people decide to break the mold, which is both good and I think strangely bad in some other ways. But with the budget conversation, one thing I've noticed persistently in people's discussion of budgets, they are translating their intent in 2023 based on what they did in historical times. And I don't mean that just from a revenue forecasting. I mean that in the modalities of marketing. Google Ads, traditionally text, maybe some variations into click to calls, maybe some variations into some image ads, variations, of course, in ad groupings and what have you, but pretty much that. Not a lot of strong lean into with new video ads or any of that usage, or audio ads or anything like that. Pretty traditional in their perspective of what their budget is being assigned for, and being included with that. Facebook, traditional, what we've done before, image ads with call to actions, carousel based on events, based on trigger points for business cycle, destination interest, what have you. Maybe they might expand some of the budget according to outside of non-branded events and activities, things like that. And unfortunately, down to the simplistic level of boosting posts. Whatever it is, that's their perspective of Facebook. It's tradition, as we talked about in the podcast last week and live show last week, actually. You remember the day when Facebook was the renegade thing to do, like, oh gosh, you're going crazy. You're running with scissors. You're doing social media on what, that Facebook thing? Now Facebook is understood. I also look at webinars, seminars, content being shared in association gatherings and so forth. And it's always a reflective dialogue. It talks about new fun buzzwordy stuff, okay? Future tense stuff. Let's go back to the buzzwords of big data and blockchain and things like this. But it always talks about functionality in the rears. It's kind of like saying about traveling to the moon, but then thinking it's going to be a sailboat that gets there in a strange way, because the modalities that are being discussed as if it is written in stone, this is how you do it, aren't. That's how you did it back then when those were the option available at the technology levels that they were capable of doing. But now we have so many more different things. And how this relates to budgeting is it's not in the budget. I'm not saying you line item Google audio ads. I mean, great if you could, but no. What I don't see in people's budgets is variance. I don't see the ability to mold based on progressive transitions of interest, based on potential focuses, based on business metrics changing, different market demands, different feeder markets based on different demographies. And I take a case in point my own personal example of this. Florida has fundamentally changed, at least in my area, for what will be a good year to come. How long some things last in comparison to others, I am not prognosticating that. But the idea that we're going to have what we usually would have as a winter season in Southwest Florida is not a reality. We'll have something. I'm not saying that we won't. But given all the circumstances of the impact of Ian, Fort Myers Beach is a tragedy. Sanibel is a tragedy. A lot of the outlying islands are a tragedy. And then you have tragedies all throughout all of Lee County, Collier County, Charlotte County, all of Southwest Florida here, in different levels and conditions. You have a change in sense of what people wanting to do to come down here, and whether there's what they came down here for still here. And so because of that, and you have a lot of restaurants that simply are wiped off the map. All that staff, all those people still need to work. If their house was also damaged, or as had been the case, the cost of living down here was so astronomically high for the overinflation of values, they just go someplace else. They might go to the East Coast of Florida. They might go to the Central Florida. They might not even stay in Florida. But the idea that they're going to stay and wait unemployed in an overly expensive place, if they still have a place to live, it's just not realistic expectations. So even as these businesses rebuild, they have to re-nurture the people to come back and work for them. And for the residents here, if they lost their houses or the damage to the houses, that's their focus, like us. if you're a seasonal visitor here, there's well, maybe not this season. Let's just get the house back up in shape and so forth and so on, repair what was damaged and what have you, or if it's repairable. But all those dynamics are changing the market for us. Well, where are the people that come down here that time of year going to go? They're going to go other places. And, it's already in discussions of some CVB level, TDC level. Is like, is it going to push heavier into the Keys? Is it going to push heavier on the South Florida, the Miamis and the Lauderdales, if there's room for that to grow? Are they going to go up into the Panhandle more? They're going to do the Destins and the Pensacola's anymore? Panama City kind of stuff? Are they going to shift over to Mobile, Alabama, and just not come to this portion of this state of Florida and go someplace else? They're going to push all the way over to Corpus Christi, Texas. Are they going to try another travel idea that maybe this year it's not the Caribbean, not the southern United States, but rather someplace else? Maybe it's the Southwest. The idea, and we've seen this happen, and we have the data that shows this. I think there was an excellent presentation from Star when I was doing traveling circuit with them. They were showing the impact of the hurricane when it hit Texas into Houston and out, and the displacement of population and the inherent displacement of bookings in hotels. It was like a wave visual. It was great. Chris and Vanessa did a wonderful job of showing the actual impact on bookings and reservations as it literally rippled out from the area that the hurricane hit, Houston, starting in Houston. So these are influencing factors that change things. But what I don't see in budgets, going back to the purpose of that, is that there's not a variability function in their budget. This is what we're going to spend for this. This is our social media paid campaign budget right here. What happens is, in the politicalness of that, you have a sandbox now. Whoever's in charge of the budgeting for social media or budgeting for paid campaigns, or whether it's third-party agency and third-party expenses or whatever like this is their sandbox, okay? 3-4 months from now, you go back and say, hey, look, I know we give you X dollars for Facebook paid ads. Yes, you did. It's all scheduled and this and this is what we're doing. This is what we're getting from it. So that's great. Yeah, I want to take part of that, and I want us to dedicate that into a campaign that I want to work with on TikTok. You're taking my child. It's my sandbox. Stay away. This is what you gave me to do this with. This is what I'm doing with this. It's producing what we said it was going to produce, blah, 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 blah. There's a political dialogue with this. And internally, people want to preserve their responsibilities, their sandbox. It's a matter of perception. What usually comes from this, if I'm talking about how Google's putting marketing upside down and, you need to think big to think small, you actually need to think small to think big, whatever it is, that's great. Great. Cup of coffee, Lauren. Let's keep talking about that. Good stuff. Okay, go back and I'm going to keep on doing what I was doing. That's what usually happens. Let's look at the players from a famous movie perspective. Analogies, right? So the movie Troy, Brad Pitt, remember? Great movie. When the Grecian army came up to siege Troy, there was one scene where all of the royals and priests and everybody was in Troy trying to decide what they're going to do. They're going to fight. They're going to just hope they go away. They're going to capitulate, whatever like this. And there was this thing where the priest walks up to the king, who is very religiously God-following, whatever, and said, I saw an eagle fell a sparrow yesterday, my lord. That means the gods are in favor with us and that we will defeat the Grecian army. Okay. Think about this. The priest, one, that's job validation. Hey, I got a voice in this, and I'm going to validate that I'm valuable in this conversation. So I'm going to tell you this, okay? And it's relevant because you believe this stuff. I'm going to tell you this stuff, and this is what I think it is. The king, in this case, wants to confirm his suspicions. He doesn't want to dispel them. He doesn't want to look for things that make him not think his idea is good. He is looking for things that validate his ideas, okay? Then you have Hermes over there. Hermes said, dang, there's a big old army out there. I want to figure out the logistics of what it's going to take no matter what happens. Attack, defend, whatever. We have to figure out what we're going to do. Our walls can hold, blah, blah, blah. He's thinking through the reality of the situation. Why do I bring all this up? Well, because it's a great movie. Because we're all one of those three people. All too often, I see too many people like the king. They're in a appointed position of authority. They are the decision maker. They have an idea in their head. And 98% of the people I know are like this. They want to validate their idea. They tend to ignore or heavily bias the ideas that don't support what they're thinking. They dispel it as random or a Minority Report, another movie, Minority Report information. It doesn't go with the consensus that I feel. And of course, if you ignore enough of them and you only hear the ones that do support your idea, even if it's 1 out of 10 or 2 out of 20 or whatever it is, you'll say that you've been validated, that this is the best idea because I even have a couple people that say that it is. Very few people will take an idea or their idea and try to dispel it, to make it not right. Like, what can I find that will shoot a hole in this so it's not a good idea? Very few people do that. Now, you have the priests in the world, which are your department heads that have their sandboxes, that have to go over and feel that they are in control of their stuff. They don't want things taken away from them. They don't want to be wrong. They want to be associated with what's right. So their easiest way is to reaffirm the leader, the king, that their decision is a great one. And here's a reason why. This is why. The eagle killed the sparrow. Okay. So that is the relationship. I validate you, the king, with the ideas that make it sound like, well, from my authoritative position, you're right. Then you get the actual logistics person, the one that's just sitting there going, I have to live with the functions of all this. I have to be the one that goes out and grabs a spear and throws it at people and bring a bunch of people and get into trouble with. I don't see it this way. I see that rationally there's this many people we're fighting against or whatever. And in the business world, I don't see it that we should be so steadfast just doing Facebook at this quantity, or paid Google at this quantity, or paid Bing at this quantity, or paid CRM engagement at this quantity, that even though the numbers are right, that we shouldn't look at other ways to flourish in other things, and that we should have the flexibility, the variability in our budget to allow for this shift in changes that occur between now and then. The one thing I can say about what I've noticed, we've talked about the changes in technology driven by the pandemic and the lockdowns and the subsequent change in engagements and so forth. And we talked about the impact on our segments, like for instance, like corporate travel. And, you know, you had, was it Bill Gates? I think it was Bill Gates. Sorry. It was a very important person that said, most likely 50% of corporate travel won't come back. And we're like, oh my God, that was billions of dollars. And then we were waiting. Okay. We didn't want that to be the truth. So we're looking for anybody else that said, well, maybe it's going to be 15%. Okay. I'll go with that number. Much better. Okay. Because nobody wants to go back and tell the king, guess what? The eagle didn't kill the sparrow. Your ideas are wrong. We're going to lose corporate business. And that means all of us are going to be bad, which means now our jobs might be in jeopardy because you can't pay us. Nobody wants to be that dude. Nobody wants to be the bad messenger. We're seeing that there is impacts of less business travel. We've also seen resurgence because of just the pent up, we got to get out there. So as soon as those numbers start showing positive, everybody's like, Bill Gates was wrong. These guys were wrong. It's going to be coming back. It's all good. It's not the same as it was, but we're saying it is. We're thinking it is. And I've been in plenty of conversations, revenue management calls, revenue management meetings, revenue management seminars, webinars. Corporate travel is going to be coming back by such and such. We're going to be back to full strength. We're going to be beyond 2019 by such and such. I love the optimism. Please don't get me wrong. However, I find that it is uniquely biased that we're not being pragmatic about this, like Hermes in the movie. Okay, hey guys, that's great, but we got to plan for if it isn't. Nobody's planning for if it isn't. The idea that revenue is going to be doing what it has always done in the ways that it has been doing it before is not true. We have more reporting, more information, more capabilities, but we don't have more variabilities from it. We know that there's new technologies because of the lockdown. Some technologies accelerate. We look at Zoom. We look at what we do here with the cameras and so forth. We know that that accelerated certain things. We also know that other platforms have gotten better at what they were doing, and other platforms that didn't need to do it anymore staled out and died. Okay. We have different technology now, but it is not reflected in our strategies for 2023. The budgets are reflected in the way we did it in 2021, 2022, 2020, 2019. The modality is there, but it's being put forward. Again, sailboat going to the moon. The idea that we're going to do the same things we've done in these past few years, only next year, without adjusting for the new technologies, without adjusting for the variances of how things can be done, like what I'm saying about how Google flipped the book upside down in looking at macro data in the determination of strategy. Okay. Some interesting things that did get brought up in a call that I was on. Google shared the fact about the question of travel for this fourth quarter. They gave the indication that there was roughly 40% of travel search that was related to financial consideration. This is Google's ambiguous way of saying we know a shoot ton more data than we're sharing. But by all the information that we know about with all the people that we keep track of, that there is a 40% growth of 40% of the people that are looking at travel have financial considerations about that travel decision, whether they're going to travel. This goes back to some of our earlier conversations of most statistically, on average, people take 2 trips a year. One is of a longer duration, usually around summertime or spring. Second one is around holidays. Well, fourth quarter is holiday travel season, as we all know. We have a lot of influencing factors on this. We have the inflation perspective. We have, just look at the politics of our midterm elections. Huge issues that should be in the forefront are backwatered by the self-centric perspective of, oh my gosh, what is all this going to affect me personally? Inflation, price of gas is like changing a politician is going to change the price of gas. Don't understand that. But anyway, people see that as an influence, as being one of the biggest things that they're worried about is these things. And it's not that they're trite things. It's not like it isn't an issue that somebody can't put gas in their car and get to work or buy groceries and things. They're very valid. I'm not diminishing the values of those. I'm diminishing them in perspective to the other things that might be important, like women's rights and so forth. Politics aside, the idea is that these influences are creating a negative impact on people's travel plans, either their duration of travel or their distance of travel at the very minimum. Okay. The only segment that Google referred to is, of course, the affluent market. It's pent-up demand. They didn't want to be seen as being tone deaf to the woes and worries of other people, but now that that's been subsided with the COVID pandemic not making scowly faces at people that traveled without masks on private planes, you're seeing more of that resurgence of people going, yeah, let's go do Barcelona, Caribbean, or Europe, South America, whatever. You're seeing affluent travel. That's fine. No worries for that. But the other travel components, because we know that budget's based on income's based on proportions of the ability to spend. If you're increasing standard cost of living, that takes away from your variable spend capabilities, which is vacations. In the variable spending vacation, we broke it down into transportation costs, accommodation costs, event costs, and food costs. And all of those have to go together for what you can spend. So as one gets more expensive, it gets taken away from one of the others. That's what we're dealing with. And we already were told in the summer that the fiascos of the summer were going to not be hopefully repeated by the airlines, but that the prices of tickets were going to go up because of lack of pilots, lack of planes, or whatever the current issue of it is. We also know that gas is going back up. We know these are influencing factors that make decisions. If it's going to cost me an extra $150 in gas to get to where I was going to go before, either I don't go as far, or I have to take it off of where I'm going to stay, or how much I'm going to eat, or what I'm going to do while I'm there. That is the reality of metrics associated with the travel plans of people. And Google is saying that 40% of current traveler search is affected by financial consideration. That's a huge chunk to be considered as to what you should be expecting for holiday markets. Right now, I also hear discussions about ADR, the integrity of ADR, the reduction of occupancy, but the maintenance of high ADRs. Well, right now, the perception of high ADRs is going to have a backlash potential effect of people looking at that there may be an exploitive component of how high you're pushing ADR. You're looking at it as like, look, I'm not going to fill the hotel up, less demand on my hard cost product, but I'm going to keep high ADR because you're looking at your comp set, all waiting to see who blinks. Old revenue management, right? The idea is if you want to, you could gather very early demand to your market, expand the durability with you in the market by being the first that does blink and change your rate that says, you know what, I'm going to eat up more occupancy and reduce my rate now and make me the standout for some things. I'm not talking about bargain basement stuff. I hate when people in your market go bargain basement on theirs because then everybody else has to follow in some sense. I don't think they should. But if you know from the macro perspective what we're talking about, the true demand to market, not the demand to inventory, which most people do. I'm talking about the unconstrained demand to market. How many people are truly interested in your market? And it's not about the amount of inventory or number of hotels. It's about what is the total search interest in your market. Calculate it from the larger number and see what you think that opportunity exists as, and then start qualifying it based on your particular market share of that and calculate that kind of math. Interesting exercise if you want to try it. So those were those two things that I wanted to get at. There's one piece of news I want to throw at. Strangely enough, as we talk about Google in the context of large data and so forth, Google, of course, gets banged around from different corners for good reason at times. Texas, and this one, I'm not a big fan of the Attorney General of Texas, but anyway, they're chasing down PC Mag article. Texas sues Google for violating state biometric privacy laws. As people know, with Google, you can do the facial recognition for their photos, so they can say that Uncle Tom is over here and Uncle Benny's over here in these pictures, and Aunt Mary and Aunt Sue are over here, because they have enough pictures of them to know that those are the people. They're saying, well, Google, that violates the Texas law about being able to keep biometric data for an abnormal amount of time. Also, fingerprint data for IDs and so forth. They're chasing all that down. So anyways, interesting piece that Google, as rules begin to catch up with technologies, you're going to have these wrinkles where entities like a state or like a country, we've known Europe as a unified unit, has chased Google down on many things like this for a good reason as to what they do, because if not, who does? Not one of us individually is going to take down the giant of Google because we don't like the fact that they kept a picture of our face. So it has to be these entities large enough to be able to handle that. So with that, we are past my topic. Again, really across the whole open plains, people will laugh at me saying, yes, you did bring us all around the neighborhood to get up to the top of the mountain. But the topic was, did Google just change the rules of marketing by the inversion of content usage and the content of data usage as a macro perspective of interpreting the value of your engagement with potential guests? So with that, thank you for watching me and for watching me go through the transitions of my background and so forth as we go through all these impacts of things. Thank you for watching us always on Facebook, LinkedIn, Twitter, YouTube, all the channels that are represented on there. Thank you most of all for watching us on our TV channel, the Hospitality Channel, which you can find on Roku, Amazon, Apple, and Google TVs. It is free to always watch the show on the TV. There is content that is subscription content, much like Netflix, although Netflix is a bad example at this point because they're in so much trouble with so many things, but the paid for content behind, which is all industry basic. If you're part of our Hospitality Marketing Club, that it gets included into your relationship with us. The hospitalitymarketing.club is a advanced, for lack of a better way, engagement of peers that are doing marketing for hospitality, more specifically digital marketing for hospitality, although we brought it into all marketing. It's not a basics class. It's not a class of any of that. We're not here to teach you what PPC stands for. We're engaging peers that are experienced already, journeyman level and up. As a matter of fact, there's a qualifier quiz that you have to take just to join the club. Because we want to keep the purity of the ability of keeping good symbiotic peer level communication about advanced and practical usages of platforms and marketing for hospitality. It's its own uniqueness for that. We do weekly gatherings, and we have our own social network. It's not on Facebook or anything. It's our own social gathering on the website that keeps it closed and locked. We're not charging for it right now. So if you're interested in dealing and dialoguing with other peers that have people that are already doing marketing for hospitality, please go there. I'll send you a quiz. You just put your email in. I'll send you the quiz. Score 9 out of 10. And we'll send you the invite. You can start joining the conversations that we're having. We do weekly videos, weekly dialogue, Q&A sessions. It's a lot of fun. Anyways, so with that, I thank you for the privilege of your time. My name is Loren Gray, and I look forward to talking to you all next week.